Happy Monday afternoon. I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to the Sal Greco Show. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're watching us on Rumble, hit the Rumble button, hit the like button. If you're listening on any major podcast streaming platforms, please like, share, and subscribe. Today, I have another guest for you, and this one is really special because on the last episode, we had Serena Townsend, and she was a commissioner at Internal Affairs for the Corrections Department. So today, we bring you Norm Seabrook, who was the head of the union for the Corrections Department. So this one will be really nice. We'll have another view on things that's going on there in the Department of Corrections in New York City. So let's get right to it. So, as promised on the Sal Greco Show, I have Norman Seabrook with us here, who I'm now learning he is a staunch conservative. So people should listen to his story. I'm sure some people already know who he is, but I'm going to let Norman tell you who he is, what he did in his career. Norman, bro, thank you first for coming on. This is an honor having you on. And as you know, you got a blessing from a very good friend of ours that told me you are a very good guy and he definitely vouched for you. So please, brother Norman, tell us your story, who you are, what you did in your career. Because the side note, Norman was involved in corrections, just to boot, because I wanted the people to know that. So, Norman, well, Sal, take it away.
I want to thank you first and foremost for having me. I follow you a lot, and you're doing great work of being able to get people to understand the offset of the newspapers where you just get a quick bleep, but you want to tell the story. So I was the president of the New York City Correction Officers Benevolent Association for more than 20 years. I've worked diligently for the men and women of the organization. And I look at specifically your case, for example. There is no way, no how I would have allowed you to be fired as a correction officer. It just would not happen under my leadership. And you could ask some of my members. I fought tooth and nail to keep them employed. Maybe if we would have came up with, oh, you need probation, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. I get that. But no way, no how would you have been terminated from the New York City Correction Department under my leadership and under the leadership of Pat. You should not have been fired as a New York City police officer, because that's just a derelict of duties as far as I'm concerned. You have a right for fair duty of representation. And in the 20 years that I was president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, I've done some magnificent things. And a lot of the things that I've done legislation-wise to prevent correction officers from being mistreated was to get significant pieces of legislation passed in Albany under then George Pataki, who I love, Governor Pataki, a Republican, someone who I support, someone who I love dearly. And I think that what happens in the system that we're in is that sometimes unions forget what their responsibility is and to whom the responsibility goes. The responsibility is to the men and women and their families. You have to always remember their families whenever it is that you are doing something to benefit the men and women of the organization. I passed significant pieces of legislation, the 3-quarter bill that correction officers never had, that police officers had. The heart bill. The heart bill is something that if a correction officer has a heart attack, he or she is allowed to collect 3/4 of their salary for the rest of their life. Okay. The heart bill, the 3/4 bill, the variable supplement bill, which gives them an additional $12,000 a year every year for the rest of their life on top of their pension. Those are negotiated pieces of legislation that I accomplished under my leadership. And in accomplishing that, we began to grow more and more and more. So people said to me, well, we need more members on the executive board. So we hired more members on the executive board, but you can't continue to take money from the general fund to pay for the men and women that you're releasing to work on the executive board. This one wants a car. This one wants a this. This one wants that. And you can't take the general fund money and pay for it. So we made some investments. and making the investments. The first year we made $1 million profit. That offset the cost of the $500,000 that we were paying every year to release these 5 additional board members, et cetera, et cetera. And as it got better, we got conned. There's no question about it. And I became the fall guy. I mean, when you have individuals that sit at a table, a board of trustees that vote for something, and something goes wrong, why is it my fault? Everybody else played a role in this. So I took the hit, and I'm still taking the hit. Maybe I'm taking the hit because in 2016, when I decided to support Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, I took a hit. Maybe I took the same hit when I supported Barack Obama over Hillary Clinton. And I was the only union leader outside of Illinois to support that man. Okay. I was the only union leader to support Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. So you know what? Look, at the end of the day, I'm a big boy. I took the hit. I'm still taking hits. They're still trying to kill me. But at the end of the day, God is still on the throne. So I'm not stressing that stuff. And when you look down the road, Sal, and I'm saying that, people keep kicking the can down the road. We run out of road now. There is no more road to kick down over here. People are complaining about, well, Trump administration's going to do this and the Trump administration is going to do that. Let's have a march. We want to keep marching for. At the end of the day, my legs are tired. You understand what I'm saying? No, I don't go to every march, but at the end of the day, we need to change some of the elected officials that supposedly represent us in the 5 boroughs and in the state of New York and get rid of them because their agenda is just their agenda. They're at a party. It's not our party. Let's get a party in there that's going to support us. You're not going to get everything you want, but I learned a long time ago, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. So you have to sit down. You have to knock on the door. You have to ask. And when people say, well, he's not going to do anything. Well, did you ask? Did you even ask to have a meeting? At least ask to have the meeting. Tell me no, and then I know what to do after that. But when you don't even have the courtesy to ask me and all you want to do is attack me, you don't know anything about me. So I've had some interesting years of my life and being a correction officer for 10 years on Rikers Island, being a union boss for 20 years. I was going to run for mayor of New York. And there was no question about it that I had thoughts on running for mayor of the city of New York because what we have now, it just doesn't work. There's no way you're supposed to have 4, 5, however many police commissioners in one term. There's no way. I love Ray Kelly. He's one of the best that's ever done it. He is one of my mentors. I love the guy. And I think at the end of the day, people have got to take a step back and say to themselves, we need change.
Norman, you sound like you should be leading the city. Maybe even a bigger than that. Because, you sound like you have ideas for legislation. And now I've always stated that as far as the legislators go in New York City and state, it's like a game because they say one thing in front of the cameras and in front of, when they're speaking to the public. And then at night they were out partying to the break of dawn with everyone from the police department to the mayor's office to, the governor's office. So it's like they're double, like two-faced where they're showing you one thing and it's really another. And I don't see you as that kind of guy like these clowns are because it's all one party rule, Norm. That's my whole thing. It's one party.
Right.
You're a conservative voice. So of course they don't like that. That's how I see it.
Well, at the end of the day, people have got to understand you can't expect me to sit down and go, okay, it's okay to bring migrants, immigrants, illegal aliens, whatever you want to call them, into the city of New York, put them up in the most famous hotels in the city of New York in Midtown, give them 3 meals a day, clean room, and give them everything that they want, but you're going to tell Mrs. Jones or Rodriguez or Josephs down the block that, you don't qualify for these same benefits. I don't understand that. You can't stand there and say, give me, look, I understand the Statue of Liberty. Bring me your poor, bring me your sick. I get all of that. But that's not where we're at right now. Where we're at right now is you're sacrificing and you're taking away the benefits of the people of the city and the state of New York to get to someone else that does deserve to be treated well, but not at our expense. That's what I'm saying. If you want to take care of them, that's cool. Let somebody else pay for it. Don't let the taxpayers of the city of New York continue to pay for somebody else's problems. Now, when it comes time to people say, well, they come over the border of Mexico. Well, then seal the border. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what Trump is doing right now. Seal the border. Do it the right way. My son-in-law, okay, came from St. Lucia. But when he came here 5, 6, 7 years ago, he put the papers in. He did everything he was supposed to do. He's a citizen now. Everything was done the way it's supposed to be done. Okay. So someone else comes along and they don't have to do the same thing, but they're going to get better benefits than he is. No, that's not fair. We need to reinvent ourselves. We need to recapture the dream that's in our hearts in the way that we need to be able to be successful. It's not happening under the leadership. You get the individuals to talk about the problems on the subway. Okay. You're trying to tell me that you don't have enough sense to reorganize the police department to be able to have it like, remember the transit division that was in the police department? They were responsible for the subways. Nobody wants to work the subways. I'm sorry. That's your job. When you get out of the academy, guess where you're going? You're going in the subways. And that's where you're going to work until you get enough seniority to go to the street. And then you go from there. But the way that they've got it right now is they don't know what they're doing. And it's unfortunate because the city and the state individuals are paying the cost for this, whether they be set on fire in trains, whether they be pushed in front of a moving train, whether they be slapped, shot, or stabbed. This has got to stop. The people that continue to elect these individuals into office that don't do anything for us need to leave with them. Period. There's no other way of putting it.
You are actually, what you're saying is almost what I've, echoed, and John McCarthy and Eric Dim and the guys at Finest Unfiltered, we've all echoed the same sentiments. And, I don't understand how the voters, and, I say this, New York City is full of low information voters. You could tell by who's elected to office. I think the last time they even had a little bit of an inkling is when they put Bloomberg in, and that was maybe in his second term. Because from the third term on, it's been, low information city where I don't know if anyone does their homework. Because when you look around, it's essentially is who is in charge and what are they doing? And they like to put these fancy little bills. Like, I could tell you one thing, in the city council there, police, it's all progressives, and the Republicans minus one or two of them are progressive light, as John McCarthy likes to call it. They passed certain bills for the police department alone. When you stop someone in the street, and I want people to notice, it's a law that they passed that when I stop you, let's say if I don't write you a summons. So if I pull you over, you have a broken taillight. I have to take your ID as a police officer, put you in a system, right, for myself, so that the police department then stores this information. So at the end of the year, they do this whole like DEI thing where, we pulled over X amount of Latinos, X amount of African Americans, X amount of Asians. What does that have to do with anything? Because I tell you what it really is. That's what the complaint was from Jumaane Williams. That is how they keep an information base, kind of like what happened with the stop, push, and frisk, right? I mean, what are your thoughts about hearing about something like that? And there was barely any pushback. All the city council passed it, and there was nothing but no one's talking about this today, but there's one bill right there that they passed. How is that beneficial for not only the police department, but for the taxpayers? And now you're going to be in a registry, basically. That's what that is. The same thing as the stop, question, and frisk.
Well, I think that when they first started suggesting that police officers fill out this questionnaire after their stop, I asked myself a question. And the question that I asked myself is, okay, you got on a body camera. Why do I have to go through all of this paperwork when the body camera picked up all of the stuff that I was doing? When I get to the precinct and I take my camera and I put it in the recharger and it's downloaded, all the information is right there. So let someone that's on medically monitored duty or whatever, let them download it and let the police officer get out there and do what it is that he or she is supposed to be doing. They have a very, very tough job as it is. There's no question about it. And a lot of police officers and correction officers work very, very hard to do the best that they can, but they get discouraged because the leadership that's supposed to be helping them and protecting them and teaching them has failed them. And that's unfortunate. And they're going to continue to feel that way. And they're just going to have the attitude as to, let me just go get a paycheck, because it's bullshit to a lot of people. You know what I mean? And you have to go to the next step. That's why I said that you continue to kick the can down the road. There's no more road, Sal. There's no more road. We're at the end of a cliff over here. And people have got to understand, if we don't start to change the things we look at, we're going to still continue to see the same picture that we see, and it's unfortunate.
Now, you mentioned something, because you mentioned corrections, and you mentioned you were in Rikers before. So there's been a federal monitor there for a while, and everybody's wondering, what the hell are they doing? They want to get rid of Rikers, all this crazy talk. What is your thoughts on all of this? What should they do? What didn't they do? What's the issue there with the federal monitor? How are they supposed to move forward? Because it seems that there's no plan, or they don't know what they're doing. That's what it looks like to me. And of course, who's paying for it? The correction officers, the men and women that work every single day and have to go to that place and have to work. That's who's paying for it. That's how I see it.
Well, I think that the first thing is, and I don't say this as a joke, they got rid of me. And when getting rid of me, it allowed them to do and allow the department to go in the direction that is going in, because I didn't allow it. It was not happening under my watch. It just was not happening. I supported correction officers, non-uniform members, inmates, doesn't matter. Inmate is there to do his or her time, care, custody, and control, send them on the bus, send them on their way, let them do what they have to do. You don't have to use excessive force like we saw in the beating death of that inmate up in the correction facility upstate New York. We don't have to do all of that. But I think that the Department of Correction needs to be overhauled. It doesn't need to be closed, but it definitely needs a lot of work. And I think that I bring that to the table because I believe that in order for you to have a safe environment, you have to have people communicating with each other. They're not animals. I don't know what they're there for. And frankly, it's none of my business. All I know is I have a securing order that's supposed to hold this person until such time that the judge decides to do whatever it is he or she decides to do. Now, the federal government that comes in and takes a look at Rikers Island and says, this is out of control. The correction officers allegedly are abusive. The inmates allegedly are abusive. The staff allegedly are not doing what it is they're supposed to do. Whose fault is that? That's the fault of the top leadership. That's not the fault of the person doing it, because if you're not guiding me, you're not teaching me, then of course these things are going to happen. When I was president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, I toured the jails. I remember one incident clearly like it was yesterday. A female correction officer was being assaulted by an inmate. The doors on both sides of her were locked. No one could get to her. A young Spanish inmate and another inmate squeezed through this window at the station, at the A station they call it, squeezed through, unlocked the doors so that the staff could get in to rescue this officer that was being raped by this inmate, okay? So that morning, I go down to the housing area and I give the inmate a ham, egg, and cheese sandwich and a container of orange juice, and I gave one to his partner. As we're leaving, the inmates on the other side are banging on the door and screaming and yelling. And I said to the commanding officer, what's the matter with him? He says, I don't know. I said, well, let's go see. So I asked the inmate what's wrong. True story, Sal. The inmate said, we don't even have commissary in this jail. AMKC, the largest facility in the Department of Correction, doesn't have commissary. That's a sure sign for a riot to take place, because you don't have any commissary. You don't have anything to give them. So I give it to him. So then one of the guys that's with me says, well, why did you give him a cup of soup? Why did you call another jail to get him some soup? I said, because you see the correction officer sitting in the corner over there that's scared half to death? He said, yeah. I said, when that inmate is beating his ass, I got to come back here and figure this out now. So why not just give him the soup? He's a human being. He's not fighting nobody. The point that I'm making is when you have individuals that don't care, this is what happens. This is part of the system. You can't skip the process. If you don't do things the right way the first time, you're destined to have to do them all over again.
You're 100% right, Norman. You know, I I've stepped in foot. I've been to Rikers Island. I had to move prisoners around, whether they go from a holding cell to arraignment. And some of the stuff you see, I mean, you know, I say that to people, like, these people are human beings. You're going to catch once in a while some guy who's a complete animal. He'll be isolated, like the guy.
Absolutely.
You know, you're going to catch that. But the majority of these people are here for what? They're going to go in and out. They don't want to be here either. You know, they might be in this. We're not going to say they're major infractions. We're going to say, you know, they've done things, but they're human beings, whether they're incarcerated or not. It's the same thing in a major facility, a federal penitentiary, something like that. People are human beings, and they want to at least be treated like one. So if you're going to sit there and do these kind of things, but you're treating them differently and like almost like you're taunting them, which, you know, I may or may not have seen in my own career, that's not right either. And you are really pushing your luck because they outnumber everyone, obviously. You know, when they say the inmates run the asylum, they can easily overrun you. If you don't
Absolutely.
treat them with respect, you're not going to get any respect. And
Absolutely.
I see this as an issue right now because you pick up the papers just like I do, and you read correction officer assaulted, a correction officer sexually harassed, a correction officer raped. Like, this happens over and over and over again over there, and I think it's because the conditions, you know, it's the system has failed everyone. That's why they're in that situation.
And you know what's scary too, and some people don't realize this, and I want police officers and correction officers or any uniform member to really understand this for a minute. When you treat people, that's somebody's child, first of all. That's somebody's child. You wouldn't want your own child treated like that. God knows you wouldn't want that. But here's the part that people don't understand. When you leave that facility and you go home to your family and you're in Best Buy or you're in Costco or you're in the supermarket, and 7 Cell walks up to you because you kicked his teeth out and you're with your wife and your kids, you got a problem coming, my friend. So you put your family's life in jeopardy and in danger because you want to be part of the good old boys. You don't need to take 5 or 6 guys, go down to a housing area and beat the crap out of some inmate and make believe you did something. You didn't do anything. The only thing that you did was now I'm impressed. Now write that report. How do you write that? How do you write that 5 of you had to do this all because he wouldn't follow instructions? Or how do you write that as a police officer that you did X, Y, and Z and you're on tape beating some guy's ass? It's not worth it, man. You're giving up your pension. You're giving up everything that you have because of your pride. Because of you, big man. You big man on campus. Well, big man on campus, how do you explain that when you're sitting in there and the jury is looking at you saying, oh, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't have done that. And now you're going to jail for something that could have totally been avoided, all because one person that was with you didn't say stop.
That's the hardest word, I believe, for some of these people. And I've seen both ends, whether it's the police department or corrections. But again, it goes back to what you were stating before. Where's the leadership? Because the way you sound, you would be probably the most Lord union president. If you were in, like, you went to the NYPD, they all want to listen to you, and they would be, and especially the management, they would be fearing you because they don't know which way you'll go. You might want to agree with them, or, you know, I'm going to take you to task because you know all the rules. Because it seems, I'll tell you, in the police department, that is a good old boys club and we know because we've seen where some of the leadership was hanging out, and they don't have all the police officers back, or the captains association, the lieutenants benevolent, or the sergeants. They're all the same where, you know, it almost seems like when you're in the head of the union, you have your little clique, you have your little cronies, and those cronies also might be attached to the police commissioner or the chief of department. But if you're a regular guy, kind of like myself, that didn't bother to be associated with all these people, and then you get hit with something, whether it be minor or big, where's the union on that? People always say that. Where are the unions? Because that's the problem. So you sound like you weren't like those guys. So now these guys, it's because if you see the problem today, that's what I think I see, is the cronies and the leadership are doing exactly what you originally said in the beginning. They have their take-home cars. Like, look at this congestion pricing thing in New York City. See how the unions were crying about that? They were all cheering for Kathy Hochul. Some even gave her a lot of money. A lot of money. So now what's the problem with what? Now you have to pay for it as the union head. You're going, what's going on with that? Why do I have to pay, right?
Right. But you see, at the end of the day, the union heads are not paying for it. The members are paying for their cars. They're paying for their expenses. They're paying for their expense account. Now, look, don't get me wrong. They got work to do. I get that. But at the end of the day, when you talked about congestion pricing, I suggested in congestion pricing is many people fly in and out of Newark, New Jersey, LaGuardia, Kennedy Airport. Why don't we put a 25 cents surcharge on each bag that's put on the aircraft? The numbers are already there. Use that money to offset the cost of the transportation division or the MTA that we need to cover us in the city and the state of New York, as opposed to putting that $9 charge on the backs of hardworking men and women. I have a neighbor who spends $200 a month to go to work. Okay. He's not getting to be able to write that off of his taxes or anything else, but you want him to go to work. You want him to pay the $200. You want him to travel to and from. You want him to do all of these things, but he's not getting a break here. And then you want to talk about, well, I took it from $15 to $9. No. What you should have done in the beginning is sit down with New Jersey and say, why not put, and just so that we're clear, I sent a letter to then federal government when I was president of the organization, when Bloomberg and everybody first started talking about congestion pricing. I sent a letter to them, and it's documented, saying, why not use the airport's surcharges on bags or individuals coming in from other countries? Just like if I go to another country, I have to pay an entry fee. When I get there, you go to Israel, you go to different places, you pay when you get there, when you go through customs. That money could be used to offset the cost, but they don't want to hear it that way, because this is just yet another money grab for the state of New York. Because if you're trying to tell me that it's $9 today, that same $9 is going to be there 10 years from now, you're sadly mistaken. Because it's probably going to be 19 by then or 29 by then. You don't know. But that's their way of keeping the people of the city of New York in a barrel. And then you get those to complain and say it's unfortunate, like a firefighter who protects us every single day during fires. They go from one firehouse to another. They have to pay when they get into the city. Then if they leave the city and come back into the city, they got to pay again out of their own pocket. Who's reimbursing these people for this? But now you want him to save your life when the five-story building's in flames. You want him to be there or her to be there to help you. You can't do it that way. It doesn't work like that. No one's talking to each other. Everybody's kicking the can, like I said, down the road. There's no more road, and now it's time for a change. I don't care what you tell me. It's time for a change.
I like your idea, actually. I never thought of anything like that myself. And wow, 25 cents a bag. You got a lot. There's a ton of people coming in and out of the airport. That would offset that cost. That would.
Absolutely.
That's even smarter than putting how much did that cost to even put those devices up that have to read your license plate and all that? It's, and then you saw how the police department was quick to enforce things there, but I guess they don't want them to enforce other things around the city.
No. Let's not enforce people jumping the turnstile. Let's not enforce people getting in the back of the bus. Let's not enforce safety and security of the platform of civilians. Let's enforce this guy who's coming down the street and he's trying to get around this $9 cost because he got off at 58th Street instead of 61st Street. Now he got caught out there for $9. No, that doesn't work, Sal. It just doesn't work. Not for me anyway. I could be wrong, but I think that when you look at it, the mayor of the city of New York has members on the MTA board. I didn't hear nobody from his office that is appointed by him on the MTA board outraged against this. I didn't hear them talk about don't raise the fare. I didn't hear none of that. When Governor Pataki put me on the MTA board, every time that they talked about raising the fare, I voted no. And they got mad at me. People got mad. Said, why you say vote no? Well, you're not doing nothing for nobody. You want to keep taking their money, but you're not doing nothing for them. When you do something for them, I'll vote yes for a fare increase. Until then, the answer is no. It's like my wife tells me. My wife tells me all the time, no. Okay.
You know what it is?
Beautiful.
you are common sense and you're trying to be fiscally conservative and say, if we're going to spend money, what are we making here? What do we do? Because you're penalizing taxpayers that are, these are just the average citizens. There's no reason to be burdening them with anything. It's a burden to be paying for this. They got all these other things they're paying for in New York City. There's a tax for everything. And here you come with this congestion pricing. But I want to show you this post. I put this up on X because bringing this up about transit. So this was something that I put up. There's a lot going on in the NYPD right now. So you talked about transit. So this was a whole transfer about cops and because they were begging to Kathy Hochul. So I put this up. The political transfers by NYPD Police Commissioner Tisch and First Deputy Commissioner Kinsella to cover the transit PR stunt ordered by Governor Kathy Hochul are backlogging the arraignment processes for hundreds of arrestees throughout New York City, including the outrageous scrounging of homeless persons being arrested for a, quote, show of numbers, end quote, in their perception management campaign by controlling the narrative campaign. All are becoming declined prosecutions. A round of applause should be in order by New York City taxpayers to Jessica Tisch, Tanya Kinsella, John Schell, and of course Kaz Daughtry for trashing morale into the toilet some more while throwing away New York City taxpayers' money into future litigation. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Hashtag the finest unfiltered. Norman, you mentioned transit. There's a lot right there, but that just happened. They made a bunch of moves, and this, I can tell you, is true. They are arresting homeless people to put up that stupid billboard you saw when Kathy Hochul went down there, and then the NYPD and they said, well, subway crime is down if you minus the 2020 and 20. It's always like, trying to say Eli Manning's a first ballot Hall of Famer as good as his brother if we just take the 2 Super Bowl years and forget the other 18. So that's what they're doing, So I want to hear your thoughts on that because that move, that's exactly what just happened. It's a PR stunt.
I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to sugarcoat this. We're being hoodwinked. That's the bottom line to it. We're being told one thing, and it's like don't watch this hand, watch this one, and it's unfortunate. But if you think about this for a second of what they're doing, they're trying to appease the governor and trying to appease the reporters to make them write something different about what's actually happening. When you start to arrest homeless people, you got to ask yourself a question. First question is, why are they homeless? They shouldn't be homeless if you got migrants living at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Manhattan or wherever hotel they're staying at. These people shouldn't be homeless. These are people who were born here, who were raised here, who fell on bad times here. What's going on with the way that they're trying to push us all off the edge of the cliff and make believe that it doesn't exist? So I think that they're being very disingenuous when they talk about these things and they give you these numbers and all of them. The police department's morale is horrible. I don't care what you tell me. I don't see no smiles on no cop's face. There's no smiles on correction officers' face. They're not saying, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow morning. It's going to be a beautiful day. They get up and they dread going to work tomorrow morning because, believe it or not, it's a paycheck. I get it, but they just don't have it no more. You've taken everything from the inside of them away, man. You beat these people down. You beat them down, man. They don't have anything left to give you, man. And at the end of the day, it's unfortunate that the mayor doesn't see that nobody sees that. And you want to talk about you've been a cop and you did this and you did that. Come on, man. Where were you really working at that you get the opportunity to look and say that these people are happy to go to work? And then, yeah, you'll get the mayor or somebody to walk up to a police officer or correction commissioner to walk up and shake their hand. Yeah, the member may smile just to be, nice, just to be courteous. When you walk away inside their head, they got so many names for you that it just doesn't add up. I mean, at the end of the day, Sal, you know this. I mean, what happened to you? There is no way. And if the mayor is listening or watching, there is no way that he should not pick up the phone, call court counsel or whoever he's got to call and say, listen, reinstate this guy. Make a deal. If you don't want to give him back pay, don't give it to him. Give him what he's entitled to, man. You get so many people that are so effed up, that get so much, and then the people that really do what they're supposed to do get crapped on every single day, year after year after year. It's got to stop, brother. It's got to stop. So God knows I pray nothing but the best for you and your family, because you've gone through the valley of the shadow of death, my friend. And that's the 23rd Psalm. Yea, though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. So you keep going and you stay strong at what you're doing.
Thank you, Norman. I mean, I've actually come together with a whole community of people in there. Like you, we're all law enforcement. You know, that's what one common bond we have. We were all in law enforcement. And whether, when we were on the job together, we were, at each other's throats and saying stupid things. It's still that one common bond. And a lot of people look at things and go, hey, wait a minute. That situation, that doesn't seem right. And a lot of times what people do, and the same thing was done with you, is they let their feelings get in the way of the facts. If you looked at the facts of things, what happened to you, just like happened to me, shouldn't have happened. Because what are the facts? Your case is, it's somebody had bad feelings and bad intentions towards you, and they ran with that. But they exclude everybody else in the picture. It's like that one right there has to, you can't do that. That's the problem in the discipline cases itself. And I'm sure you having to go to these trials and stuff for the correctional officers, when you represented them, you could see how a lot of it was done almost like it's a punishment because of off of feelings. And that's my whole point. The disciplinary system must be abolished. And it's something that my own attorney, who Eric Sanders, he's very big with this in the New York City Police Department, because it was actually he who was fighting to change the system, because it's just designed to screw you over. It's not fair. It's not impartial. And now with that whole, what do they call that? The Matrix. That's a whole nother scam, because as you've seen, the former police commissioner, Eddie Caban, he varied off of it the most out of any police commissioner. All his boys, all his cronies got off with light sentences and kept their jobs, and everybody else got screwed. So many people have been getting screwed while he was in charge, while he was the first deputy commissioner. Yet there's crickets out there. The union, they were partying with him. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying here. No, I mean, you got to see that, what are your thoughts on the way this discipline system is, corrections itself, and the New York City Police Department? Because they go hand in hand almost.
Well, I think, and you could ask any correction officer about me and my leadership. I'd sit down, I'd have a drink with the commissioner, and then I do you the next day, because at the end of the day, that shit ain't, that's, I don't do business like that. You're not going to abuse my members just because you have the power to do it. It's just not going to happen under my watch. There are officers that I may or may not even like. I get text messages all the time talking about, we wish you were still here. We wish you were still here. Come back. We wish you could come back. I get that, but that's another part of my life. It's the former things in my life. It's now time for me to do bigger things in a bigger way to help more people than I can. And it's people like yourself that gives me this platform to be able to say that and to do that, because I think it's important. Although I knew the chief, the commissioner, and everything else, there was a certain developing of a relationship. They knew for a fact, without a doubt, that I wasn't this guy that was just going to let you do what you wanted to do to them. It's not happening. And you know what? At the end of the day, you don't like it. It's not personal. It's business. And people accused me, don't know if it's true or not, people accused me of shutting Rikers Island down one day where no buses went nowhere and no transfers, no inmates, no courts, no nothing. They said that I did it. I didn't do it. I don't know nothing about that. But I know one thing, nobody got hurt that day. There was no problems that day, but they got my message loud and clear. You are not disrespecting them. And I tell the officers all the time, I stood at graduations, and it's on tape. I stood up and said, you will not abuse inmates. Give them what they're supposed to have. If they want an extra blanket, give it to them. They want an extra piece of chicken, give it to them. You're not paying for it, so what do you care? That makes your day that much easier. It's like the police officer walking down the street. If you don't have the police officer walking down the street to know the people in the neighborhood, that's going to be a problem. You need to put the police officer in the community. Let them get comfortable with working in the community. Stop making them write all of these different reports about who they talk to. If you say hello to somebody, you got to write down, I said hello to Miss Jones. I said hello to Miss Rod. What are we doing here? We're spending 4 hours of writing and 4 hours of trying to police the community. You can't do that. We have kids being shot and killed on the streets of New York City, stabbed to death, all because, we don't have enough men and women to do the job. It's horrible. It's mismanagement. There's a mismanagement crisis going on in the city, in the state of New York, and we, the people, are paying a cost for it. The cost that we're paying for it is with our lives.
Not only that, you have mismanagement. Look at who's in charge. When you just looked at the last few weeks, and I've taken a beating for this too, with the whole Jeffrey Maddrey situation, because there was a female who's a lieutenant that was there and made all these, allegations. Actually, more than that, it's getting worse because obviously they didn't suspend Jeffrey Maddrey right away. Here's the true story is she had made allegations prior. Nobody knows the dates, but she did. And then in the last month, they wrote this article about her. It was in the New York Post. Obviously, it must have been planted by someone in the Jeffrey Maddrey camp, who then, as she's putting in for her paper, she had enough. She wants to run out the door. She's had enough of this monster. He turns around and suspends her. Now, he suspends her, and within 24 hours of that suspension, she hires Eric Sanders as an attorney who's had history with Jeffrey Maddrey, had him on the stand prior in his previous case that he had. He had a bunch of other cases, Maddrey, but in a previous case. So he all of a sudden resigns the second that happens. No one's pointed this out but me. He resigned and left the day Eric Sanders took her case and filed his complaint right after that. So that right there, what you heard, is pay for play, and people could say what they want. Either Lieutenant Epps is the hero or a villain. If she's a villain, then I say she's a necessary evil, because without her, you wouldn't even know what's going on behind the scenes. Because the people I'm talking about, whether it's Jeffrey Maddrey, John Schell, Kaz Daughtry, you got this thug up there, Tariq Shepard, another one who doesn't know how to talk to anyone and had an officer underneath him go and almost kill someone, left him a paraplegic out in New Jersey. Well, He should have never been in his office. This is complete mismanagement no one's ever seen. So I don't know if in your day you saw anything like this, but what you're mentioning is what's going on right now. And that's just the police department. We haven't even looked anywhere else.
Well, and it's sad. And at the end of the day, I say this wholeheartedly. Anybody knows me. I would have walked in as a union boss. I would have walked into the chief's office or the commissioner's office. I would have used some very colorful language, and that shit would have stopped immediately, because that's who I am. And I don't care who you are. I took an oath of office to represent the men and women and their families, and that's what I intend to always do. To this day, I get officers to call me to ask questions about whatever it may be. I'd be happy to help them. But at the end of the day, I support unions. I support the union leadership that's there. I'll do what I can to be helpful. But if you don't have a line of communication, it's not going to work, because if you think that you're smarter than everybody else, which I don't, and that's why I talk to other people, because I don't know everything, and nor am I trying to know everything. What I do want to do is continue to do what it is that I'm supposed to do for the men and women. So yeah, I think, Sal, at the end of the day, when you look at all of the things that are happening, and listen, I'm not pointing fingers and saying it's your fault or it's your fault. It's everybody.
Unless it's the actual person up top. So I wanted to ask this one thing. I mean, people already know they've watched the Sal Greco Show extensively. What are your thoughts on the illustrious mayor of New York City, Eric Adams?
I think that Eric, in my opinion, I've known Eric since he was in the Senate and everything else, and was very supportive of Eric. I think that Eric, like a lot of other individuals, forget who supported them and who was with them. And he goes along with you, my boy, you, my buddy. And you see where that shit got him. And I don't mean to say that word, but you know, where you see what that got him, or where your boy got you. Okay. So at the end of the day, I respect the office of the mayor of the city of New York. As people may know, I was the only union leader to support Mike Bloomberg, for mayor of the city of New York against every other union in the city of New York. And I supported Mike, and Mike is a great guy. He did one term, then he did a second term, and that's what I supported him for. And then, you know, people said, well, Norm, you fell off with Mike. I said, yeah, because he said he wanted to do a third term. And I said, no, that's not what I told my people. I told my people 2 terms. And they said, well, why don't you support him? I said, because I tell you, I give you my word on 1 or 2. Now you asking for 3. And now I got to go back to you again. I said, I'm not doing that. So in the case of Eric, I think that, he's got a lot of work to do. At the end of the day, this thing is a mess. It's an absolute nightmare. Okay. And if you want to be honest about it, tell me what you're doing about the individuals who have no heat, no hot water, but then tell me about the individuals you have in a hotel that's getting 3 meals a day with heat and hot water. Tell me what you're doing about the kid that goes to school with no shoes on, and then tell me what you're doing about the other children that came to this country off of a bus that you stood there and said, welcome, welcome to New York, welcome to New York. Okay, now they're here in New York, and guess who's paying the bill for that? I didn't sign up for that. Okay. Nobody in New York signed up for that. I get it. I understand, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. Everybody's supposed to pay their own way. You can't skip the process. You can't jump ahead of the line. There are some people out there screaming and yelling about, you can't do this and you can't do that. Let's get this straight. What about the old lady or old man who's been on the line for the last 5 years trying to become a member of the United States of America, but they get overlooked because these people jumped the line? I got nothing against them, but you have to do things the right way. So yeah, the mayor has a problem with this. And you know what? Don't blame Biden for it. You told them to come. You called the governor in Texas and you stood up and said, send them to me. So guess what? He sent them to you. Now you don't like it. At the end of the day, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for.
You know, a lot of people sound just like you. I think you hit more home because you knew the guy and you had to work with him back in the day when you were in the unions and you had to deal with just about everyone in the city. So now I wanted to segue to one final thing before I let you go. The whole criminal association part. So, as you know, in New York City Police Department, what they said that the patrol guide procedure they said I violated was that I wrongfully knowingly associated with someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity, which would be, i.e., Roger Stone, someone we both know. So they
Roger,
said,
good guy, Roger, good guy.
And he said the same about you, by the way. I wanted to say that in the beginning of the show, the person I said that vouched for Norman is Roger, who had very, very high things to say about Norman, just so everyone we're clear. So they said that I associated with him. They called me they said I was his uncompensated security, whatever the hell that means, because on January 5th and January 6th, we were sitting in a hotel room not knowing what the hell happened. I was never charged with any crimes. Nobody was charged with any crimes. We were investigated as if we were Roy DeMeo from Canarsie, but there was nothing there. And at the end, the police department, they used illegal subpoenas. They used administrative subpoenas to get my phone records. They said I was associating with this one, that one, all people I don't even know. And then they said, well, there is the thing you did here. You associated with Roger, and he's a quote-unquote felon, so we have to charge you with that. And they wanted me to be terminated for this, basically. And they said I give misleading statements because I was not admitting that I was his security, even though I wasn't his security. I was never paid, and there's no check or wire transfer to prove this. I was never his security, but that's what they said. They put me through as you know, there's the trial room in the NYPD. That's a kangaroo court. The commissioner, judge, he's the commissioner of the room. He's a trial judge. He said that, he let this go forward. We caught this guy perjuring himself, this guy, Jeremy Ornstein, a sergeant. And he had all this, nothing. All he said was, well, on the subpoenas, which were illegal, he wrote that I was narcotics. I was using narcotics. But they never dull tested me. This was never an allegation like narcotics. Where'd that come from? He can't get anything, whether it's the records for the Willard Hotel where we were staying, whether it's the Verizon phone records. None of this works without him making this wild accusation. Now, during the trial, Roger Stone did come. He witnessed everything for one day. I saw Roger 3 times in New York in the span of 3 years. So for anyone who thinks I may have gave sensitive information, that's ridiculous. There is no sensitive information. Roger lived in Florida and I was NYPD. And Norman could vouch for me because he knows him. That's ridiculous. There's no information from the police department that could go to Roger. So ultimately, Eric Adams as the mayor, Keyshawn Sewell as the police commissioner, Eddie Caban as first deputy commissioner, they all agreed to terminate myself. Of course, Eric, in his time as a police officer, when he was a sergeant, he was charged with associating with criminals himself. Nothing ever came of that. As you know, at the end of his career, they took 15 days because he went on television and he hurt, I guess, someone's feelings in the police department doing so. So that is the criminal association thing. So before I show you something else, in the corrections department, did you have these kind of kids? What's the rule in corrections? They have something similar that you can't associate people.
Same scenario. But at the end of the day, like I said, as a union boss, I walked in there and said, I'm not accepting this. We're not accepting it. And at the end of the day, you know, if you want to give them 15, 20, 30 days, you want to give them 6 months probation, we could work that out, but you're not going to fire him. You're not taking away his food. You're not taking away his pension. And that's just the way it is. You ask anybody. It just doesn't happen. It has to be so egregious that I can't win. But at the end of the day, by the grace of God, I won a lot of cases for a lot of men and women that, you know what, a lot of people said I would. You could ask them. It's not even me. You ask them, they'll tell you I wouldn't have my job if it wasn't for Norman Seabrook. And I was the type of union boss, I give my phone number out at graduation. Call me. It's your phone. You're paying for it. Call me. And I'd get up and you could ask my wife 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the hospital, to go see about an officer. I've been to so many different incidences in the Department of Correction, for individuals that got involved in different situations, whether it was shootings, whether it was, suicides, whether it was homicides. It didn't matter. I represented my people. And that's just what a union boss is supposed to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I had a lot of board members that didn't get up out of bed because they felt that, I don't have to do that. And that's the difference between, someone who cares and someone who's just there to collect a paycheck, you know, and do 8 hours. I wasn't an 8-hour guy. I was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week guy. So you know what? And I'm blessed, Sal, to be honest with you, to be removed from that environment right now, because look at that. Look at it now. Look at it. You know, and I say this without reservation. Look at the administration. If I'd have still been there, who knows what I'd be involved in right now? Who knows who would have been banging down my door right now? But God moved me for a reason. He said, because the people that were around you, Norman, I don't want them around you anymore. And I'm happy with that. They can stay far away from me as they possibly can, because they meant me no good in the first place. And as far as relationships with Jimmy Rodriguez or anybody else, at the end of the day, Jimmy Rodriguez opened a restaurant on Fordham Road years ago, 20 years, 30 years ago. And that was the only place for Black and Latinos to have a place to get lobsters and shrimps and everything else and have a good time that was uptown, that couldn't afford downtown prices. So it took off and it started to make things happen. But then it got into a point where, you know, it's like, you know, a couple of shady looking dudes here now. You know, you can't control everybody that comes in here, but you can certainly sort of like monitor certain things that go on. So I understand what you're talking about. Look, I know Jimmy personally, nice guy, but at the end of the day, sometimes you have to do things a little bit different as you get older in life. I'm doing things a lot different now that I've gotten older in my life. I've learned a lot about the people that I've surrounded myself with that I thought, like I said, were my friends. They weren't my friends. I don't get those phone calls like I used to get. You understand? I know people that got promoted in the police department and other places because of my relationships and because of my conversations that I've had with police commissioners and deputy commissioners and things like that. And God knows, if I would have known about we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, because you wouldn't have lost your job. And I blame those that are responsible to protect your job that this happened to you. It's not supposed to happen.
Well said. I wish somebody in the union. Oh, that's right. The guys in union were also hanging out with Jimmy Rodriguez, like Pat Lynch. But so I did. But this is the last thing I wanted to show you. Is it just happened, and we'll get a little bit into Jimmy Rodriguez. There he is. So this just another one fresh off the presses here. NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Equity and Inclusion Wendy Garcia's replacement from the Department of Sanitation has allegedly declined the position because of the unconfirmed rumors that Tish is stepping down. That's the police commissioner. Garcia's office would be under investigation, all the NYPD fiasco. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Hashtag the Finest Unfiltered. And of course, there she is pictured with the one and only infamous Jimmy Rodriguez. Now, the reason I bring this up, and of course, that whole thing is, Wendy Garcia's office is being investigated because the EEO complaints would go to her, sexual harassment, all that stuff, and they all got, they're nowhere to be found. That's a problem. That's why and that's why she has to leave. So that's the story that I covered a couple of days ago. But there she is pictured with Jimmy, which would mean she is reasonably believed to have engaged in, likely she's hanging out with someone who does that, correct? So here is the backstory is he calls himself restaurant presario. He's the co-owner, co-manager of Conza Frito.
It's closed.
Yeah. Now, there's a reason it closed, though. So,
closed down. It's closed down. But and let me say this to you, Sal. Not for anything, but to be straight with you, like I always said I'm going to be, he needs to turn around and get a guy like Ray Kelly to come in and just clean this whole place up because it's bad. It's bad. And like I said, the morale is horrible. The morale is horrible. There's no reason why you got to have a job that you don't even want to go to, man. Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy.
And I'm saying to myself, though, with the history of that place that had the human trafficking report, they had the food, there's rat, dumplings in the food, there's rat, they have, everything. They shouldn't even have a liquor license, and it's owned on paper by Eddie Caban's brother, who's the police commissioner. Knowing all of this, there's all kinds of crazy stuff, too. There's the pay-to-play out of there, all this stuff. And Jimmy's history is a self-admitted criminal and a mob associate. That's a fact. That's where we learn. So should anyone in the New York City Police Department, forget about the rank or structure, anyone who's employed by the New York City Police Department or the Corrections Department, step foot inside of Conza Frito or anywhere near Jimmy Rodriguez? The question is yes or no.
Well, to answer the question, I think that if you have rules and regulations that bind you from doing certain things, then the answer is no.
Because if you can't hang around Roger Stone,
right? Well, like I said, if you have rules and regulations that say you can't do this and you can't do that, then that rule and regulation applies to everyone. Period. Now what's good for one is good for another. Now, if you're saying that rule doesn't apply, then the mayor needs to pick up the phone and give you back your job.
Well said, Norman.
It's the truth.
This has been a riveting hour. We're going to have to do this again in the future. Where can we find you? What are you up to these days? Are you doing your own show? Where can people see you?
I do YouTube. I do TikTok. It's called Get Up, Tighten Up. I do that's on YouTube. That's on TikTok. I do Facebook at Norm Seabrook. I do Facebook. I do Instagram. I do all of my I do those because my buddy Chris over here, he just keeps going, Norm. I can't even rest with this guy, but that's my brother. He works sanitation, and he's been in sanitation for almost 20 years now. And I remember when he came into the Correction Academy, he was going to be a correction officer. And I walk in to give my presentation to the new recruits, and he's sitting in the audience, and he says, don't pick me. Because I pick people to get on the stage, and I give them the reality of what they're about to face. You're about to face and hear stories about your mother that you didn't even know coming out of these inmates' mouths. Mm-hmm. You're going to be disrespected every day. You're going to smell urine and feces, and it's just going to be a horror scene for you. And it's unfortunate because correction officers, Sal, they don't even have bathrooms available to take showers when they finish doing 8 hours after having urine and feces thrown on them, thrown in their mouth while they're walking down the hall. They're doing 16 hours. They're doing 3 tours. There's mismanagement all over the place. The boss goes home, but the officers got to stay 16 hours, 24 hours, no meal break. And when they get a meal break, they give them a cold sandwich or something that the inmates serve to them. And the inmates looking at them and it's like, that's all we have to serve you. It's horrible, man. And I'm willing to help. Do you understand what I'm saying? But they got to pick up the phone and say, Norm, give me something here. Help me work through this to get this done. Because at the end of the day, it's just like I told somebody a long time ago, even going to talk to police officers in the police academy, they're not talking to them real. They're giving them this BS. I'm going to talk to him real. I'm going to talk to him like, I'm going to get in your face. I'm going to show you how to allow yourself to put your pride aside, that you don't have to deck this guy. You understand? So what? Let him run his mouth. I don't care. That doesn't hurt it. Doesn't have nothing to do with me. Keep it moving. But we are faced with so many different individuals that want their hand to control things. They're control freaks, but they don't know what they're controlling. And that's unfortunate. And people could say what they want. I supported, like I said, Donald Trump in 2016. I supported him again in this last election. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's time for a change. Call it what you want. But we can't keep doing the same crap we're doing and expect a different result. It doesn't work like that. That's just me, though, Sal.
I think you echo the sentiments of the majority of this country. Remember, it's over 50% that voted for President Donald Trump. This has been a riveting hour, Norman. I hope to have you back soon. You have a new follower in me, but I knew about your past, but I didn't know how much of a conservative you are. And we have Am
I a conservative?
I would say so. I think you have common sense. What you are today is what a conservative is today. You know why? Because the Democrats and the whole liberal left wing is just, they're out way in left field. They would never agree with you. They want you gone, which is kind of what happened, unfortunately. They found out that you supported a guy they didn't want. You went, all right, with Trump, get rid of him. Go find something. Find something on him. But ignore that, all the other unions who, by the way, there's a whole scandal with the Crowlow car. Those are the leased cars from the NYPD that they've ripped the black boxes, the GPS boxes out of certain executives' cars, and they were giving those cars to their wives. So what do you think's going on in the union? I mean, look, we could go on and on and on. That's why you got to come back, because there's so many more topics to cover. But I want to say this. Definitely. You should be a voice, a leading voice, not only for the city, but the state of New York. And I hope you try to take a position somewhere where you could get involved in some sort of political office and take the reins for those that are failing New York City. That's you too, GOP party, because we all know that it's really one party in New York City and the state, because that's what we've seen. Failed leadership, whether it be in corrections, the police department, or the leadership politically in the state.
Well, look, Sal, I'll be the first one to tell you. I've reached out. I've talked to some Latino and African American elected officials, and let me tell you something. On the next show, boy, when I drop their names, that these guys don't even want to call me back, or I can't help you. Oh, but I was there to help you, though. Yeah. It was okay when you needed help. It was okay when you needed a lifeline. And now all of a sudden, when someone else needs a lifeline, you got amnesia. Oh, no. Karma is real, my friend. And when it comes around, boy, does it come around. Sal, I love you, man. God bless you. Have a blessed day, my brother.
You too.
All right. Tell Roger I send my love. All right. And I hope to see you soon. All right, buddy.
And for everyone else out there, that's a wrap for the show. Tune in to the next edition of the Sal Greco Show. Thank you for watching. Follow Norm. He's on the path to redemption all the way back to the top. Believe me when I tell you.
Thank you.
I'll see you on the next one.